Good evening, my dirty girls. How are we tonight? So, tonight our topic is all about leading like a boss, which you are all capable of doing. And there's a couple reasons actually that we came up with this topic this week. First of all, congratulations to a lot of you. I've gotten multiple calls in just the last couple of weeks indicating that several of you have gotten new positions, either at new companies or gotten promoted at your existing company. And it's that, congratulations, that has led to the topic of tonight, which is how do we lead? How do we lead in a situation where we've been previously a peer? How do we lead in a situation where we're walking into an unknown environment? How do we lead in general? And for those of you who have worked with me, you know that I'm a big fan of this concept that you are a CEO. And as you know, I'm always setting up on the side here to make sure I can follow the video and follow your comments. But you are the CEO. You are the CEO of your life. You are the CEO of everything that you choose to do. So I don't want you to think about this concept of leading like a boss just from the standpoint of, well, I'm not in a manager role, or I'm not in a director role, or I don't have a team to manage. That's not what this is about, right? Leading like a boss is about making those decisions that you make every day that shape your life, that form what it is you want to do. You are a leader when it comes to how you run your household, the choices you make for what you buy when you grocery shop. You're a leader when you manage your family and family dynamics. You're a leader when you go out in the community and you volunteer. You're a leader when you're walking through the grocery store and you're just interacting with perfect strangers. Everywhere and every way we show up, we're leading. We're leading our lives, we're leading ourselves, and we're modeling for other people how we want to show up and what our lives look like. So tonight's topic, while it is leading like a boss, and we're going to talk specifically about two particular work situations, I want you to think about it in this broader context of no matter where you are in your career, where you are in the corporate ladder or launching your own business, you're still the boss. So for those of you who don't know me, thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Natalie Hahn. I am CEO of Dirty Girls Consulting, and as always, super happy to have you guys here joining me for Training Tuesday. Would love for you to drop in the comments a hello. Let me know who you are that's watching, where you're from, and as we go through the training tonight, as always, when it's interactive, it's way more fun. So talk to me. Ask your questions, share comments with each other, share stories. It's all good, and we're all here in this safe, private environment for exactly that, to share and to support each other. So the comments show up in the chat. It's over here if I'm looking this way, so I'm not just avoiding you guys. I'm actually looking to see what the comments are, and sometimes they show up a few minutes late, so I will try to keep up as best I can. And it's Joyce. Hello from Ohio. Great to see you again. Glad you're here tonight. So I want to dive into this idea of leading like a boss and what it means. And the two work scenarios that come up the most around this are I'm at my current job, been here a while, and I just got promoted, or I just got a new job at a new place and it's a higher level, right? It's a higher title, it's a higher level than what I've done before. And in both cases, we tend to experience a bit of anxiety as we step into these new roles. Hey, it's Sue and Rose. Excellent, ladies. Great to see you tonight. Thanks for joining me. So I want to talk through the different types of anxiety that we often experience when we're stepping into a new role and how that can actually hold us back from stepping up and stepping into your leadership skills. And then I want to talk about 3 simple things to keep in mind that are going to help you lead like a boss, no matter what area of your life you're in, no matter what role you're in, no matter what new realm you're stepping into. And again, don't take this as, these don't apply until I get my promotion, right? Or these don't apply until I get that new job. This applies tonight. This applies when you get off of Facebook and you go in the kitchen and decide what you're having for dinner. This applies when you go interact with the rest of your family, when you show up at work tomorrow. It applies when you go to the grocery store, okay? How we show up as leaders, it's how we show up everywhere. I had a coach that used to tell me constantly, how we show up anywhere is how we show up everywhere. It's just who we are. So as I said, continue to drop comments in the chat, say hello, say where you're from as I'm going along, ask your questions or make your comments, share your stories. That's why we're here. So both situations that I just outlined, right, where you're getting promoted inside a company or you are taking on a new job, I've done both. So 15 years ago, 20 years ago, the first time I got promoted into an executive role, I had already been at a management level inside that company. And so suddenly people that I had been peers with either were now reporting to me, or people who had been above me and I'd always been interacting with them like this were now my peers. And there's a whole set of somewhat uncomfortable questions that we come up with when we're suddenly put in that position, right? The first and foremost is, are these people going to listen to me? Right? So for however long you've been there, right? For years, these people have known me as this person in this role. Now I've been elevated. Are they going to listen to me? And that feeds into, especially in an environment where you've been promoted above peers, the question of, how do I act now? These people used to be my lunch buddies, and now I actually have to tell them what to do. And we used to always complain about what we would do, but I'm now no longer that person they can really complain to. I'm the one they're going to be complaining about. And that brings up more anxiety around, am I even good at this? What were they thinking about promoting me in this position? Am I ready for this? How do I treat my former bosses? How do I treat those people that I used to report up into or always have that step down from, and now I'm a peer? How do they treat me? How do I navigate that? Who's going to help me? One thing, and for those of you who work with me, you know I find this critically important. We all need mentors. We all need support. Who's my mentor now? Have you been out-promoted from your mentor or from your support system? Who's going to help me now? Who's now more invested in my success now that I'm in this new position? And the last question that comes up a lot, and it's a big one, and it's a really important one, is to consider, can I really do things differently? When we're in a work environment where we're pretty comfortable, we've been there for a while, we know the people, we know the dynamics, we fall into patterns just as much as the rest of our peers do. And suddenly, all these great ideas for how we were going to do things differently and shake things up, the question starts to come up. Can I actually do that? Can I actually change the pattern? So Rose says, yes. Are they still going to like me and trust me? Exactly. Exactly. Because now you've been put in a different position and they're looking at you differently. You're looking at you differently. And so there is a question around, what is this new dynamic in our relationship going to be? Now that's in a position where you're being promoted from within. When you're stepping into a new role and it's at a new company, slightly different set of questions. Similar, right? You still want to know, are they going to like me? Are they going to trust me? I need to establish my credibility here. How can I more quickly establish my credibility? And the good news is, coming into a new role clean, they're already assuming you know what you talk about and that you got the job because you know what you're doing. So that's one of the pluses. You don't have to earn that credibility quite so hard. And it's ironic, isn't it? The people who know you the longest are the ones who usually you have to work harder with to build the credibility that you can actually do more and step up. When you're being hired in cold, it's a lot easier to simply walk in and that credibility is built in because you've been brought into a role to do the job, period. But still we have the questions, right? Are they going to like me? Am I going to be able to do the things here that I want to do? Who will be my support system still comes up. Now you've got to look around and kind of go, all right, how am I going to make this work for me? Like, who's going to be here? Who's going to have my back? Who's the person I can go to as I'm navigating these office politics, trying to figure out whose role really does what, and how would that potentially impact me? How do I learn the ropes, right? How do I figure out how this company operates? Because if you've moved around with your jobs, you know every company not only has their own culture, they have their own pattern and habits for how they get the job done. They have their own unspoken rules about how they interact. That's a whole new level to manage and to have to navigate while you're stepping into a new job, trying to build a new team or trying to establish new relationships. So there's a lot going on, and all of the underpinning of this, no matter which one you're stepping into, is this question of, can I actually do this? What if I'm wrong? Because anytime we put ourselves out there and we step up in a leadership role, whether it's a new job, whether it's we volunteered to lead a project, whether it's we've been assigned to work on a committee, or whether we've just volunteered at our kids' school, at the back of our head is always this question: can I actually do this? Right? Self-doubt, that imposter syndrome starts to speak up, and it says, you've got some work to do. You've got to prove yourself. You've got to work harder than everyone else, right? The imposter voice in our head is the voice that tells us we're not perfect, we're never going to be perfect, and everyone else is better than us. And it's a really, really common voice that speaks up when we're stepping into leadership in any form. That voice that tells us that we're really not yet good enough. And the thing with imposter syndrome, here's the good news. If you have it, when you're stepping out and you're putting yourself on the line out there because you're leading a new project, because you've stepped into this new role, because you've taken on something bigger than you've normally taken on, when that voice starts speaking up, the imposter syndrome voice is most common in high performance, high achieving women. It's not very common in men, although it is there. And when you are a lower performing person, it doesn't bother you quite so much. But when you are ambitious, when you are high performing and you are putting yourself on the line, that voice speaks up loud and clear. Now, when I was moving from a director position into a VP position for the first time, I was moving into a realm where, and honestly, actually, when I moved from my first position to my first director level position, I was moving into a place where I was put above my peers. I'd been working with a team for a long time, and then I was in a position where now I was managing that exact same team. So navigating that piece of it for me was having pretty direct one-on-one conversations with my team members to say, hey, I'm moving into this role, you're going to be reporting to me, and if we have anything we have to work out, let's get it on the table now. So one way of navigating the peer conversation is to be pretty blunt and pretty direct with what your expectations are, and making sure that if there are going to be issues, that you've put them on the table. When I was stepping into a new role, one of the most critical factors for me was finding that mentor, finding that person who would help show me the ropes, who would help me understand how does this company work, and who could also serve in kind of a mentor position for me. And I was very fortunate that one of the most critical times that I stepped into a role that was a step above where I had been, so it was a significant step up for me. It was a whole new experience. It was a new industry. I moved 2,000 miles, something like that, right? I moved several states away for it. So everything around me was brand new. And within my first week, another senior woman in the company reached out to me and said, let's have lunch and let's talk. And she became not only a mentor, but my friend, and she was the co-founder of Dirty Girls. But my first week on that job, she reached out to me and said, we should have a conversation because there aren't a lot of executive women at this company, and we all need to know what's going on, right? We all need to kind of band together. So Joyce, why do I have the urge to wave at the screen when you say, I don't know, Joyce, but if you want to wave at me, that's totally fine. I'll wave. So let's talk about, we've talked about kind of the questions that come up, right? The questions that come up when you're moving into these new positions, and they tend to be laden with a lot of self-doubt. And self-doubt is really not what we need. But here's the thing, when the self-doubt kicks in, if we let it take control, right? If we let the doubt spin in our heads, we run the risk of several things here. So the first risk we run is what I call the crab bucket risk. So the crab bucket risk is where we fall into those old patterns. And we can do this just as well at a new job as we can at an existing one. So while it's easier to slide into old patterns when we have the same old coworkers and the same old peers and the same old culture, so like I said, asking ourselves that question, can I really make the change I want to make here, is critical, because you start to realize you have to make different choices and do things differently if you're going to make change. Even in a new environment that you walk into, it can be very easy to break back into old patterns because we're comfortable with those patterns. We just have to identify, are those old patterns actually going to help us move forward the way that we want to move forward? So we fall into the crab bucket risk. The crab bucket risk is Think about the imagery here, right? You have all these crabs in a bucket, and there's always one crab. If you've looked at a crab bucket, there's always one crab that's trying to climb its way up the side and hook a claw over the edge, right? It's trying to get its way out. That's you. It's you kind of peering over the edge going, there's something different out there. There's something more out there that I want to see. When a crab is trying to escape the crab bucket, what happens? What do the other crabs do? The other crabs start grabbing at the crab and pulling him back down into the bucket. This is what happens when we're surrounded by old people, old patterns, right? Is we fall into those old behaviors that have worked in these older relationships or in this older environment, and we're all comfortable with it. It's not getting us where we want to go. It's not helping us advance, but it's familiar and we know it. So we do it. It's easy. It's a path of least resistance. As long as we're in the crab bucket, we're not making progress and we're not making change. So I want you, as you step into any new role, whether it's how you make breakfast tomorrow or it's because you just took on a new executive position, I want you to walk in and look around and think, who around me is part of the crab bucket? Who's trying to hold me back into the place I've been in because it's comfortable for them, but it's not really where I want to go. Another risk we fall into is the people pleaser, especially when we're taking on a new role, and so there's new people that we're trying to interact with and that we're trying to gain their approval, right? As Rose said earlier, we want them to pull them back down. That's exactly what happens, Rose, in the crab bucket, is the crabs, they pull them back down, exactly. When we're stepping into a new role and we're concerned, I want my team to like me, I want these people that I'm now the boss of to still respect me, we fall into people-pleasing patterns, right? Instead of stepping up and making decisions, sometimes making the hard decisions about who does what role, or who stays on the team or who doesn't, we make the decisions instead that will help us be better liked, that will help us maintain some level of even keel so that everybody's happy. And if everybody's happy and I'm liked, then I'm gonna be a good leader. Maybe. You might be liked, you're not being a leader, right? Because what happens when we're in people-pleasing mode? We're not making progress on anything that we actually want to make progress on. If you think about the goals that you have for your career, the goals that you have for the business, I guarantee you there are some tough decisions in there. People pleasing, not related to it. Now, connected to this is a third risk. That third risk, and there's a whole other training on people pleasing, and there's a whole other training on this one, which is addiction to criticism and praise. When our behavior patterns fall into this addiction for getting either criticism or praise, we're falling into a similar category as people pleasing, which means we are making decisions not based on what's best for our career or what's best for the business or the project or the school committee or breakfast. We are making decisions based on our ability to receive praise for what we've done, or our ability to get criticism, some sort of feedback. Some of us thrive off of criticism. And Rose says, people pleasing can also lead to a lack of respect from others. Absolutely, when they recognize it for what it is. Because now as a leader, think about what leadership means. Leadership means we are showing a way. We're taking a position. We're holding true to our values, to our thoughts and our beliefs, and we are lighting that path. As long as we are in people-pleasing mode, as long as we are addicted to criticism and praise, what we're doing is we're actually paying attention to the light other people are shining. How are they leading? And we're followers. We're not leading at all. And we're certainly not getting our own agenda accomplished at that point. Fourth risk, lack of mentorship. If you're not proactively looking for a community to support you, to be your mentor, to be your coach, to be your friend, right? When we go through our group coaching class as well as one-on-one, I'm always asking all of you, like, who's in your tribe? Who's in your tribe? Because they play different roles. Everybody needs to have cheerleaders in their tribe, and our cheerleaders are honestly, a lot of times, our family, our friends, right? The people who wish us well. And they may wish us well, but they may have very little to do with actually supporting us. In our tribe, we still need our allies. We still need people who are going to help us get where we want to go. We still need our mentors, people who can shine the light because they've been down that path before. You still need coaches, people who will give you feedback, who will give you ideas, who do not have a vested interest in your outcome. The key is to find people who support you, who, no matter what decision you make, they're in it for your best outcome, not because they have another agenda behind it. You absolutely need a tribe. So another risk is you lose mentorship. When you fall into people-pleasing mode, when you fall into criticism and praise addiction, you lose out on the mentorship that you could be getting. And the fifth risk is what I call the self-confidence risk, because here's what happens. When we don't tap into our knowledge, our intuition, and our experience, and that's what you have to bring to the table. You bring knowledge, experience, and intuition into every situation you walk into. When you don't tap into that to make your decisions, then you start eroding your own self-confidence. You start ignoring the fact that you have a well of resilience. And that resilience helps you get through any bump. It helps you get through any doubt and any fear. Because most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time in business, when we're making a decision, making a choice, and taking a stand, we're doing so because we're trying to achieve an end for the business, an end for the company, an end for the team, right? There's an end goal in mind. Most of the time, nobody's gonna get hurt and nobody's gonna die. So truly, take a stand, right? You need to have the self-confidence to be able to step up into that decision and say, no matter how this pans out, we're gonna work through this, but this is what I believe is best. The more we start following other people's leads, the more that we give into this idea that we need praise, that we need to get other people's feedback, that we need to hide and get other people to support us before we take that step forward, the more we deny our own ideas, right? The more we deny our own ability to lead. We erode our own self-confidence when we fall into these patterns. So what do we do? What do you do? So the three keys I wanted you to walk away with tonight are, if you've been working with me, for those of you who are new, welcome to this. You're going to hear this a lot. For those of you who've been here many times before, this is going to be familiar, so keep it in mind because it solves a lot of problems. First and foremost, if you're going to step into leadership, you're really going to lead like a boss. And I don't care if you're leading like a boss because you're telling your kids to clean their room, or because you're asking your neighbors to pull together for a community event, or because you've truly stepped into a new director or VP role at work. Doesn't matter. First thing you need to do is identify what your goal is. First thing you need to do is be really clear about what you want as a leader. What is it that you want to achieve? Today, I'm going to achieve the best French toast you have ever had. That's my breakfast goal as a leader, right? Today, my goal as a leader of this community group is to raise as much money as we possibly can. Or it's to organize this team so that as they are handing out the free bottles of water at the race, right? It's all organized and every runner gets a bottle of water. Or it's at my job, I need to increase revenue by 17%. Get very clear on what your goal is that you're striving for as a leader. Where do you want to make your mark? Maybe your goal is bigger than that. Maybe your goal is this job is great, and in this job, I'm achieving X, Y, and Z because in 3 years, I want that other job. But here's why you need to be focused on your goal. You need to document it so that you remember what it is, because it helps you stay focused. The minute we start losing sight of what our goals are for ourselves is when we start sliding into those patterns of being people pleasers. Is when we start, instead of acting on what we want to do, reacting to criticism and praise. So get very clear on what it is you actually want to achieve so that you can focus on your goal. The other reason why you want to document this, so write it down, stick it on a whiteboard, stick it on a Post-it note, I don't care what it is, but put it somewhere where you can see it. You want to stay focused on your goal so that you're focused on your career and your career path overall, and not just on your job. When we get really good at the day-to-day of our job, what happens? We stay stuck in our job because we're really good at it. And we're not pushing ourselves and looking beyond the day-to-day of our job to get us further in our career. So know what your career goal is and have that first and foremost in front of you. So that's one, right? First step, know your goals. Second step, Know what kind of leader you want to be. There's all kinds of leaders. There's 16 million personality tests for the different kind of leader you want to be. There's two things I want you to focus on. First is your values. As a leader, what kind of values do you bring to the table? Because this is going to dictate how you show up as a leader. Understanding your own values, what's important to you as a leader, is going to dictate how your team behaves, who you hire, how they interact. Maybe as a leader, what's important to you is organization and efficiency. So you're going to be focused on putting in processes and systems that create organization and efficiency. You might be a leader who's more into innovation. So your ideas are going to be a lot more around, how do I push the envelope? What do I need to do to build my team or to move this company forward where I'm pushing the envelope? That's an important value to me. How do I work that into my position as a leader? Maybe you're just somebody who likes to have fun. How do you incorporate fun as a leader? What does that mean? So I want you to think about your key values, not more than 3 or 5 that are important for you to show up as a leader. And those go right up with the Post-it note that tells you what your goal is, because your values are going to tell you how you get to that goal. It's going to keep you in alignment with yourself so that you're leading from your strengths. Now, in addition to your values, think about your leadership style. Some leaders are focused on their team and people and creating a community or creating a network. They're really good at the people skills. That's one style of leadership. So you're going to use your innovation or your fun or your organizational skills to connect that team together. And you're going to drive through projects and initiatives with your people. Other leaders are more focused on the outcome, on a goal. I have this goal to achieve, I have to get to the goal. And they look then at the people and the processes as the tools they need to get to that goal. One style isn't better than the other. It's a different way of looking at how do you use your resources and how do you use your own time in order to manage to your goal. You've got a career goal, now you need to look at what are the things you need to achieve to get there, what's the most efficient way to work that process. So some people are people-oriented, some people are more goal-oriented, some people are more vision-oriented. There has to be a broader swath happening in the universe that they're going after. So think about your style, your leadership style. Are you focused on people or are you focused on outcomes? And then what are the values you bring to the table? So that's 2. That's all about you. Third one is the hardest one. And the third one solves a ton of challenges. How do you lead like a boss? How do you show up and lead like a boss? Well, if you know what you're going after, that's the first step. If you know what your values are and how you want to lead, that's the second step. But third and most important is you've got to know your boundaries. When you are truly the CEO of your life, of every area of your life, you know exactly where your boundaries are. You know what areas you're willing to be flexible around, and you know which areas are a hard stop. This is the one area where we are the most resistant. We are the most resistant to making change because this is not a go with the flow. This is not a people-pleasing action. This is not reacting to criticism or praise. This is you truly leading. When you establish your boundaries. So what are the boundaries that you need to be thinking about? You need to be thinking about the boundaries of your time. What's appropriate time? So there's work time, there's family time, there's play time, and with this wonderful thing we had called COVID, all of that blended together, right? We talked a lot about that this past year, how your dining room was also your office, was also the homework table, how all elements of your life were blending together. Well, guess what? Time management is critical. So when are you willing to answer phone calls and emails, and when are you not? What are you going to do with your energy? What are your boundaries around energy? So Jackie says, hire, fire, and promote accordingly. Yes. So when we're making decisions on being a leader, those are the toughest ones you'll find. The more you get to know people, the more you hear their stories, the more reluctant you are to make the hard decisions. This is also a boundary, Jackie, is understanding what you're allowing in your team and in your work environment, and therefore what you're allowing to impact your broader career goals versus what you're not. So drawing boundaries is about defining very concretely how much autonomy you have versus how much autonomy your team has, the kind of conversations you're going to have, how you're going to communicate, when you're going to communicate. Deadlines. How strict are you going to be about hitting deadlines or meeting deadlines or promising these things? Personal sharing. What kind of conversations are actually going to be happening at work, especially with people that you used to have lunch with every day and now they report to you, right? New boundaries have to be drawn and have to be held for this to be effective. And this is the hardest step of all three, right? Super easy to sit there and say, oh yeah, here's my goal. I know exactly where I want to go with my career and I know exactly what I'm doing. And here are my values, right? Organization, efficiency, and fun. Those are important to me. I'm going to incorporate that in everything that I do. But now I have to actually draw the boundary that says, I'm not taking calls before 8 a.m. I'm not responding to messages after 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. Whatever your boundaries are, you decide. I coach so many of you who tell me, oh, I can't do that. My boss demands, my job demands that I'm always on call, that I always respond. Or if I don't respond, they're going to think I'm not a team player. I have a zillion trainings on all of these areas, guys. You know that. And it's also not true. It's the lie that we tell ourselves that keeps us busy. And when we're busy and connected, we feel like we're being productive. And we're not. We're just spinning our wheels and wasting our energy. So if it is your mission to actually own your time, own your career, and lead like a boss, lead like a boss, whether it's your personal life or your professional life, you have to own your boundaries. Whole other set of training on boundaries, happy to share with you guys. So do me a favor, if you want any of the other trainings sent to you, just drop it in the chat. We have the training on criticism and praise. We have training on, what was the other one I said? People pleasing. Lots of training on boundaries. Happy to share all of those with you. Just let me know which ones you want. Drop it in the chat and I will send those your way. Also, if you want to dig a little bit deeper into how you lead like a boss, how you're stepping into your next step, whether that's your career because you've gotten a new job, whether it's because you're stepping into a new project, whether it's because you just want to do things differently, then drop the word dig in the chat. And dig means I'm going to reach out to you for a 15-minute free conversation, free coaching conversation. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into how you want to lead and what that looks like for you. And what we're going to do is get you to the one next step that gets you closer to your leadership goal. And that's all it is. It's a short, free coaching conversation, no sales pitch because there's no time, and it's just focused on you. And it's one way for me in this group. You guys show up for the trainings, you send me your emails, you send comments on the postings and everything. I love all of it. I appreciate it. So it's one way for me to give back to you guys. If you can give me 15 minutes of your time, I can help you move to the next step and the next level of where it is you want to go. So thank you very much for joining me tonight. I expect every one of you to get off Facebook now and turn around to your lives and go lead like a boss. Have a fabulous evening, guys.